Okay, good morning, guys. Hope we're all well. Just getting myself prepared. All right, so just let me know if I'm coming through loud and clear, and then we'll get up and racing. Just move that, few things around. Okay. Okay, so let's get that. All right, welcome to TradeSetup, and we've just got the morning playbook, or the Asian session morning playbook for the 21st of May. All right, so just before we get started, you can see on the screen there's our TradeSetup website, so it'd be much appreciated if you can jump on the site. You have a look around. There will be a few changes made, probably hopefully in the coming weeks, coming probably days actually. We're going to be starting to, you can subscribe to a newsletter that we'll be sending out weekly, probably a couple each week. One will be on just bits and pieces, and then one will be on sort of trading tips. We're going to be adding to that website as well, so feel free to join on there. And you'll find down below, if you scroll all the way down below, you'll find our social media links. So you've got Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So it'd be great if you can join us on there and subscribe and help spread the word. All right, let's move along. Let's get across to what we'll start off with. So today I'm going to have a quick look at Bitcoin, Ethereum. I think they're starting to potentially set up on the short side. It'll just be interesting to see if they can. They had a bit of a spike lower last night and started to bounce a bit. And we'll just want to, what we're watching for now is a bit of a lower high. So we'll have a look at those, the pound also, and Hang Seng ASX 200 and the Dow. So what you're seeing on the screen now is the Dow. You can see that, yes, they was looking for a bit of a, get rid of that, bit of a pullback. Okay, but the market is just, it's very strong. And coming to last night, we had Fed Chair Powell speak about stimulus, and you know, most people are addicted to stimulus at the moment, so it's supporting the market and it's doing well. Let me just make sure we're all good to go. Yep, all good. So supporting the market, and it seems like the bulls are well and truly in control at the moment. The market made back pretty much all of the losses from the previous session. We've got Facebook and Amazon, I think, pushed into new all-time highs, so they're doing great. There is still that tug of war between fundamentals, which are not good at all, and the market and what they're showing. So it's whether or not, especially in the US, because if they start rolling over, we'll go with it, whether or not people are willing to pay up for forward earnings. So the earnings are not good now, and they will come out, I think, taking a bit of a hit. So it's whether or not people are willing to continue to pay up for forward earnings, potentially 2021. Okay, forget about this year as a bit of a write-off. And there's a lot of companies taking off guidance as well. So if they're happy to do that, and stimulus is happy to continue to support the market, and people are happy to dive in, then it'll just keep going on. So as long as nothing changes at the moment, I don't see, as in, I think the biggest thing will be once we get out of lockdown, if the numbers of the virus effect starts to spike again, that's going to create probably a bit of concern, and it's probably going to push out those valuations. That's going to hurt the economy a bit more, and that's what I think a lot of people will be reading into it. Now, as long as nothing changes till then, and we've got a bit of time up our sleeve, the market will probably keep going higher. So on the Dow, we've seen, there is a zone just in here, in 24,550. Now, obviously, what we'd be looking for is either a break in your first sort of pullback to provide that lower high to sell into, and this is a half an hour chart we're looking at here. Otherwise, we'll be drilling down to the 5-minute charts to trade off on the short side. Otherwise, if we just start to edge down and we start to lift again, you look for that continuation trade up and through that zone at 24,550 and see if we can push back up to, this zone up here around 24,8 coming to the US session. So that's the mini plan of attack. So we've got the Hang Seng from yesterday. What we were looking at, this was the zone, the sort of the two zones. So we can see that on the open of the futures market or the index, it flushed up through that resistance. and it's come back down and spent most of the session there basing right up until sort of European Open, and then started to lift into the start of the European session. Really started to kick off. Well, probably kick off just after 5 once the index opened. So that's when the Dow continued to grind its way higher, continued to hold higher levels. So anyone who's thinking there's going to be a bit of a sell-off, it didn't play out that way, and the Dow was held up quite nicely, and meaning that the Hang Seng held up nicely as well. So this was off the cards pretty much as soon as it started holding that zone. We'll get rid of all that. Holding above this zone at 24,250. Again, we're just looking for that inside level. Okay, so you've got a bit of a push, a bit of a flush out. So that's going to flush out the any of these sellers built up into the close, flush them out, put them back on the sidelines, and then sort of clear a path for a move up, which it did. And you can see this ever so slightly higher low just in here to work from. So we break that candle there, in you go, and up she goes. So that turned out nicely. What else do we have here? Let's go over to pound now. So this is the pound. Excuse me. So there's two things with this. You can see it's been in a big downtrend. It's pushed through this support zone, okay, from previous lows, which comes back till, was it 7th of April? Okay, flushed it through. We've bounced back. So, but what we've done, what we can see is that that trend down has broken. So there's two things. I'm sort of biased looking for a bit of a short squeeze, but whether that's going to thump through that support and then bounce straight back, it's kind of the challenge, I think, at the moment. But if you're looking at, or what I normally look at, you've got these highs, rejected the highs again, and it's come straight back down. So what would happen if people have been buying up, looking for that that continuation higher? They're potentially set to get squeezed out of the market. So if the market does pop higher, just 1 second there, clear that throat. Too much talking in the mornings, really. All right. So you've got, if that market starts pushing lower, I'll expect a bit of a squeeze, and there's going to be a few buyers that just building up, starting to get squeezed out, pushed back out of the market. Now, if that happens, we've got enough fuel that's risen on this side. They just brought it up off these lows around 2100, 1.21, 2100 to be clear. Enough fuel there that could squeeze them out, but again, you're sort of, I mean, with everything that I'm looking at, you've got the buyers have pressed it up, and look, they didn't get too far. They've only got so far as 122.50 or thereabouts. So a good amount of pressure from the buyers, but really not getting anywhere. So it means that the sellers are stepping in and soaking up any of that pressure and just keep slamming into the bid. So if we're looking for that to push down through the low, momentum's easing off. So you can see momentum's rising up here, rise, stalls, starting to ease off, coming out, starts swinging down. So what we'll be looking for is if this market starts to spike up again, if we get sellers kept coming in, the stochastics comes down to sort of that oversold level, and we start to pick up again, it may go off the cards. You want this to hold around this zone and then push through the lows, really to catch any of these buyers off guard. But we'll see. We'll see what plays out there. That was mini Hang Seng. Pound gone through. ASX 200, we'll look at it. Actually, we'll look at that now while I've got that up. Here we go. Pound Aussie. So this is the SPY, which is just about to open. Okay. So you can see there's a zone. We pushed up into this zone. So that's about where we sold off after the big rally overnight. ASX come in and sold off. So it was up by about 100 points for the day, but sort of spent most of the day selling off. And then the night when the US is down, we continued down and we started to lift yesterday and last night. So we continued on from the day's momentum, which caught a few sellers off guard. Continued on and pushed up back up into these highs at 56.16. So it'll be interesting to see. I sort of expect it to spike through and then maybe pull back to build a higher low, because the markets are quite strong. So we'll be looking for sort of that first pullback, see if we can get a long off, potentially a long, just looking for that squeeze higher. Otherwise, if that starts to hold, you want to see a good pullback to catch some people off, and maybe something like that to press lower. Okay, back down to that 55, 75 zone, 79 zone. I wouldn't say that there's going to be severe weakness today, purely because of the equity markets are so strong at the moment, and everyone's trying to make a buck, and there's not many places to put your money to search for yield anyway. All right, so let's see. We've got now Bitcoin and Ethereum we'll take a quick look at that. See how I'm going for time. So far, so good. 10 minutes, that's good. So a couple of minutes and we'll get through that. So you can see that SPY is just starting to kick off now. It's hard to trade it right on the open before equities open in 10 minutes and then they're finished in about 20 minutes from now, they finished opening, so you'll get a clearer picture of what the market wants to do. So for now, it's just sort of that wash. It's rinsing people in and out of the market, setting up for a potential move higher or lower once the bulls and bears fight it out. Let's go back to our charts here. Let's get on to Bitcoin. So longer term, if I take a step back, we'll go to the 4-hourly chart. So longer term, I'm seeing the move down. You know, this is off the was it 20,000 market. It's just this big channel down. We're coming into that zone. So we were speaking about this yesterday. All right. So we've got this uptrend off the support around 4,000, 5,000. It's dragged in a few buyers, trading quite a few buyers, pushed up. And we're just starting to come to a zone now where you would expect to find some resistance. So there's a bit of confluence there. You've got this high, this resistance zone up here. So there's no reason why it can't spike up into that zone and then fall away or just continue on. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, but there's, to me, when we're looking at probabilities, there's a higher probability that's going to start to roll. Oh, 45, like, not even 30-minute chart. There's a higher probability to me that that's going to start to roll. And we saw a bit of a breakdown yesterday. Now that trend up is still intact. So it could be a bit of a flush like that. We start to reset and go up again. That's fine. But what I'm looking for is you can see this level held, okay, pushed back up to that zone, held again, bit of a pullback, held. Every time it's sort of flushed up into that zone or near it, it's getting sold into. And we're starting to see that first sort of sign that, yep, the buyers are giving up. We've just pushed through this low, popped through that low, flushed that out, even flushed out this low just in here, if you can see. Probably only by a few points or so. If I can draw it properly. Flush that out. We bounced back quite hard. I mean, that was a good solid bounce back, about 600, 500 points. But what it is starting to run into steam, a bit of selling pressure here again. So as long as it holds below the MA, if we start to chop around and start to roll over again, we're just looking for that lower high and a breakdown off a key lower high. That makes sense. Something like this, get a bit of push, pop back up, buyers give it another go, and it starts to find some selling again, basically selling on that break and with the risk just above. So we're boxing up our trade there. All right, let's see how that goes. So that's your Bitcoin. Like I said, a lot of pressure up there looking to come in now. Even if it spikes down through here, you got a handy trade. It's a good risk reward anyway. But if it doesn't, if it starts to spike here and starts to have this real shallow pullback, there's a chance that it's going to go straight through and we could be looking at 8,000 again, or 83 or whatever, pushing straight through. That's where this zone comes into play. So we'll have to see how that can hold up. We might get something like this. If we get that rollover and start bouncing again, then it's a good chance that longer term we're going to find support and roll up. All right, so that's Bitcoin. We'll just tick over to Ethereum. Now, Ethereum, same sort of process. We found this resistance. Potentially that's starting to break down again. We could be at the early stages, and we're really just looking for that lower high to come into play again and squeeze out some of these buyers. Buyers that bought it in here are under pressure at the moment. They're probably underwater. Then you've got buyers bought it through this zone. So there's a whole lot of buyers stacked up potentially to get squeezed out of the action. I'm not saying that's exactly what's going to happen, but if it starts to hold, essentially I want to see it hold below 211. If we hold below there and we don't get too much of a correction back up, because a corrective action back up will start to imply that this is a washout. Okay, if that makes sense, a washout of this lows. And that's not what we want to see. We want to see that pressure continue. Okay, not just a flush out of the lows, hold it again and rally back up, because that will probably take you back up to the highs. And the same really applies for the for Bitcoin. So if we can hold here, hold on to these lows, what that's going to do, anyone that's held through here on the flush, looking for it to bounce back up, feeling quite positive, that's going to put the pressure on them. All right, and then in turn, it's going to put the pressure on buyers that are coming a bit lower and are sitting in with gains. You don't want to see those gains evaporate. All right, so that's pretty much the plan of attack for those two. We'll see how they go, and we'll see what pans out today. Mainly on the Hang Seng and the ASX and the Dow. We'll see what pans out today. Anyway, thanks very much for joining me. And remember, if you can jump on the website and subscribe, we'll have a link on there soon. with regards to newsletters. So feel free to subscribe to that. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining me. Any questions, feel free to send an email to support@tradesetup.com.au. We'll speak to you again tomorrow. Happy trading.